Welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations, your authority in navigating the world of homeschooling diverse learners. Featuring Peggy Ployer from SPED Homeschool, Annie Yorty from AnnieYorty.com, Leilani Melendez from Living with Eve, Stephanie Buckwalter from eLARP Learning, and Dawn Jackson from Dawn Jackson Educational Consulting and Tutoring. With over 75 years of combined homeschooling expertise, experiences, and perspectives, this group is eager to share their wealth of wisdom to empower your homeschooling journey. So grab your favorite mug, settle in, and get ready for insightful discussions, valuable insights, and practical tips. Give your homeschool the power boost it needs to successfully educate the unique learners in your home.
Hi, friends, and welcome to another episode of Empowering Homeschool Conversations. I'm Peggy Ployer, and today's episode is a heart-to-heart among our hosting team, at least most of us, of parents who've been there, done that, and are still cheering you on. Today, we're talking about life skills and social skills, not from a place of having it all figured out in the moment, but from looking back and seeing what really mattered over time. Most of us on the team are in a season where our kids are now teens or adults, and we're reflecting on what helped, what took longer than expected, and how God showed up in the middle of the mess. If you're in the thick of teaching things like brushing teeth, holding conversations, or remembering to put the milk away, this episode is for you. We want to give you real talk, some practical ideas, and a whole lot of grace. And while you're here, don't forget to check out Homeschool Heroes at spedhomeschool.com for trusted tools and support for homeschooling unique learners. Plus, explore past episodes of Empowering Homeschool Conversations for more encouragement, practical advice, and stories from parents just like you. We get it. So welcome, ladies. I am excited about this conversation.
Yay.
Hi.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. So let's open the door kind of on this conversation. Just looking back, what life skills did you feel the most pressure for a child to learn? Could be one child, all of your children. And then what actually helped to move forward with that skill over time?
For me, it's manners tied to communication, because communication, one child is nonverbal, and when you said or children, I have another one who's kind of awkward, and just teaching them how to be mindful of their manners by thinking about others instead of focusing on their discomfort. For the ones who are cognizant of that thing, and for my daughter who's nonverbal, just teaching her to say, please and thank you, and being there to interpret it so people can understand that's actually what she's saying.
Right. Those are big things. Yeah, definitely. Anybody else?
I'm just I don't know. I'm just thinking I have some, stories of just awkward moments of my son saying the most inappropriate thing at the most inappropriate time and using them as teaching moments for me and for him. And I have this one story I'm debating whether or not to share it or not, just 'cause I don't know if it would come across. It's a weird, I feel like I should share it now that I've talked about it, but it's we were at the playground, and he was very, very young, and he gets overstimulated when there's too many people. And so he was trying to say, I only want to play with my one friend. I don't want anybody else bothering me whatsoever. But then he started categorizing people at the playground by the color of their skin, which he was too young to understand any of this. And I didn't know, I wasn't aware of what was going on. And he was labeling, and he said, I don't want to play with these people. And it just, it was a mess, so to speak. But learning how to find ways to be respectful of others, and to learn how to use the correct words appropriately. And also me being aware of, okay, is this a situation where he's going to be overstimulated? And if it is, I need to be present right there with him to make sure that he's learning proper ways of handling himself and the words that are coming out of his mouth, and to guide him by example and modeling. So.
Absolutely. Yes. We get embarrassed a lot by what our kids do, and we can't take it personally. I mean, it's all, I mean, they usually do things without intention. And then we just have to, use them as teaching moments. I love that, Leilani, because they really are. And if we don't see them as that, it can be so frustrating and so overwhelming, so anger producing as well. But these are just places, and God has taught me that through the years. They're places where I see character flaws in my kids. And it's places where they need to be instructed. They need to be taught. And so it shouldn't be a frustrating moment. It should be a revealing moment that opens up this world of curriculum that my child needs. And when I understood that, that became like a freeing moment for me. Instead of I needed to control that child, to tell that child what to do, it was more like, this is the pathway this child needs to be led through. And equip yourself now for these things. And I always looked at like godly character, and we would talk about that. What's honoring, what's dishonoring, what's, and so then I felt like I had this framework biblically then to teach my kids from. But did you have something to add, Dawn?
The only thing I can think of, honestly, my memory can't think of all that. But the one thing I do think about is when we were out in the community and how we would work on behavior, like if we were in a store or something. So if we went into a store where there was like fine china or dishes or glassware, I just remember like teaching my daughter to hold her hands behind her, together behind her back, and walking, and we're just looking. And it was really, I don't know how I learned to teach her that, because I probably wasn't like that as a child, but she was really good about it, and she was the firstborn. So that worked for her. Like any kind of structure where I taught her like a certain behavior, she really liked that. She liked that order and that guidance. Actually, all my kids are like that, but she was the real organized one that wanted to know, how do I behave? What do I do? What are things supposed to look like? That kind of thing. So that's what I remember.
Yeah. And some kids are like that. They really want you to give them kind of a prescribed way of going through that. I know my oldest was that way. My others, not so much.
Right.
But when you have a child like that, embrace that if they're willing to take that instruction.
Well, if you can, like I'm not like that naturally. So it was really just kind of a God thing, because it wasn't coming out of me. It was just something that, okay, I know we're going into this place. We need to have like some type of behavioral conversation. And like I said, I don't know where that came from, but I'm not naturally like that. And it was challenging for us together growing up and homeschooling, because she was very much like that. And I am not naturally. So it's something I'm still working on.
It's all a work in progress. Yes. Even if kids that are adults, you're like, oh, when will you get that? But I think we do. We think of, it's like, oh, this child will never accomplish that. And yet we keep plodding on. Do you have any stories of, I don't think we're ever going to get there, and then all of a sudden they do? I know with my daughter, her room is a disaster, absolute disaster. But that's the career she's going into, is to be an archivist, like to organize things. So she has her own methods of organization, but I go to her like apartment and it's all organized, but the stuff that she left in her room at home is not. And when she works at jobs, like she organizes like whole departments. And I'm like, how do you do this and yet not be organized in your living space at home? I don't know what the deal. I think she might have just too much stuff. But it was really surprising to me that she all of a sudden became organized and liked organizing things, because that wasn't something that I saw as a skill that she could ever develop.
Interesting. That is interesting.
Yeah. Any other stories of surprising moments?
I don't know. I feel like my son is in this transition of going to surprise me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I've seen how he is around me, and does certain things, but then when there's someone completely different involved as a leader in it, he like steps up to the plate. So I'm waiting for that transition, but I see it from a distance. So one of the things is it's almost like he doesn't, anytime I ask him to do something, he doesn't want to do it. I'm sure I'm not the only one that happens to, but,
Right.
but he struggles with going to church and he just doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to participate. He hates everything. And I feel like our conversation has been, I don't want to go because you're forcing me to go, because we do this every single week and I have to go and I don't want to go because I want to make and on and on and on, this kind of conversation. And then all of a sudden something like happened where they're doing a mission trip and he's like, I'm going. And then all of a sudden he's like, I'm going to church. But I'm kind of like, it's a church we don't normally attend. It's a different one, but he wants to go there. And I'm like, you know what? My son's going to rebel and become a different denomination. It could be a lot worse. So I'm just kind of like, okay, no, this works. Like, go to Jamaica, do it. So that's where he's going. Yeah, he's going to Jamaica by himself. And I trust the people who, he's going on a mission trip. And
how old is he? How old is he?
15.
15.
He's 15. I have so much peace about this, just by seeing his change from like not wanting to be involved in anything at the congregation. And then all of a sudden he's like going on a mission trip at another congregation. And so I'm just like, and I have so much peace and I trust the people. And I'm like, okay. So, yeah.
Wow. That's really cool.
That's yeah.
So I'm seeing
so you talked about resistance. I think that's one of the biggest things that we have to learn as parents is when and how to discern to push through that resistance or step back and wait. And I'd love to have a little bit of a conversation about that, because that's a tough place to be, because you want to push because you see that your child needs to improve in some area. And yet sometimes if we push too hard, it'll backfire on the things that we're trying to do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Any advice for parents on that?
That was one of the hardest things for me with my son, who's just got the milder disabilities. And it was always so hard for me to tell if his resistance to learning during school was related to if it was an attitude problem or a learning problem. I could never tell, is it because the sensory system's out of whack or is it just a bad attitude? And most of the time, I don't think it was the attitude problem. It was just trying to get his body under control enough to do the lesson. And when that was on days when that was too hard, or if he had already been doing stuff and then his body was just shutting down, he would shut down. And there was no way to pull him back into that. That was always a challenge. With my daughter, who's more severe, it's probably not a wise thing, but I just assume it's the body problem and not the attitude problem. So I'm kind of paying the price for that now that she's older. Is because I assumed it was not a character issue. But I gave preference. It wasn't that I didn't assume that. It's like I gave preference to the idea that it was a physical, neurological problem and not a character problem, and then the nonverbal complicates that. But looking back now, I wish I would have been quicker to assume that there were some character issues that could be worked on at the same time, even if I couldn't identify exactly what they were.
That's a hard one. Wow.
Yeah, that brings up some really good, understanding, because I think I leaned toward the other side and probably thought everything was a character issue and I didn't actually realize that my middle child had so many sensory issues because he just hid them so well, or they turned out in defiance most of the time. And now we're paying the price for the opposite, is that he is so resistant to me wanting to, speak anything into his life, because I always see it as something that we need to fix. And, so yes, it can go both ways, and it's easy to lean either way. Thankfully, God's grace covers that, and we just move forward. But yes, it is a struggle because you just don't know.
I feel like this resistance thing I could talk about forever, because I feel like I'm coming against that a lot with all of my kids right now. Well, I have
on for you guys? No. Can I put a little coach hat on about this? Because I've dealt with this so much as a teacher in special education and working with different kids and doing a master's degree and motivating children. How do you motivate them? You know, their intrinsic part that they were born with, their natural curiosity and that will, you know, that strong will, that's resistance that says no. And one of the things I learned, probably the biggest thing I ever learned in all of my education and all of my work is that I can't motivate them. I really can't motivate a child to do what I want them to do. Now, if I add punishment to that and restrictions, yeah, I might be able to get them to sign up and show up and do it with an attitude. And like I was working with a student a couple days ago online, and 7th grader, and he's like, I'm only doing it because you're telling me to do it. And I said, I'm not telling you.
That's pretty typical for that age. Yes.
He's in 7th grade, and this is his life story. But I said, I'm not telling you to do it. I asked if you could say it, but if you don't want to, it's your choice. And the thing is, it's not reverse psychology. Let me just clarify that right now. It's really this understanding that I cannot make you show up. I mean, like I said, we can make them do it, but we can't make them show up with that learning heart that we want them to have. We can only say, look, I get it. And I've said this to many kids, especially the older ones. I can't manipulate you to do this. I believe this is information that you can take and listen to and tuck away in your heart. But at the end of the day, the ball is in your lap. It's in their lap. Like I said, yeah, you can punish your child. You can cajole them. You can give them rewards. You can, promise them this and that. But to really, really get them to come on board, to want to learn, to want to engage, you're going to have to sign up for our coaching because there really is a lot to that. I'm working with a mom right now. And honestly, I had to tell her, stop homeschooling your child. You need to build a relationship with that child in a very special, unique way. And these are nonverbal children. And so she started doing that, and it has changed everything about these 2 or 3 minutes she gets to teach. But it's more than she's ever had. And it was just by sitting with them, taking them for a walk, attending, listening, watching, observing, taking data. And, but it's also that respect piece of, I really can't make you, I know I could talk on this all day. We're not going to go anymore, but I can't make you do anything. So,
right. And it's more about that child's heart. And I've learned that if there's only so much we as parents can do to change our child's heart, God has to do the rest. And that can be really hard when they get to be an adult and they have still a hard and resistant heart. But that's life. I mean, we can do as much as we can. We can model as much as we can. But if that's their character and that is the way that they were made, we read all these missionary stories of these, people who were like so off the edge. And we love that how God captured them and changed their lives, but we don't want to be their parents.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that.
Exactly.
And
that would have been hard.
The truth is they all had moms that were grieving, were praying, this child has gone off the rails. But God had to do something amazing to make that story amazing. And that, it's a hard place to be when they are resistant.
Yeah.
But
and if you can,
God
if
doesn't.
If you can instill, I'm so excited and passionate about this. If you can instill or show your child some idea of what the end result is, what the goal is. And I have an amazing story of the 6th grader that I worked with this last year who was just not interested, not motivated, just kind of scraping by every day, just talking about being at home. And I sat down with him one day and I drew on a piece of paper a line. I said, this is where you are. This is where you want to go. Right? This is your goal. This is your dream, which we had already talked about. I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you right now? And he was like, a 4. Like, you're in 6th grade. How do you feel like you're showing up on a scale of 1 to 10? He says like a 4. So we had this conversation that this path is just to get you to your goal. I said, unless you are going to be homeschooled, that's a different story. But right now, this is the road you're going. And you can choose not to graduate from high school, but life's going to be very hard for you. It will be. It will be hard. Even with his learning challenges and everything, without that degree, it will be a lot more, but not impossible. I said, if you're an entrepreneur and you have an amazing idea and make you, a lot of money, you'll be fine. But the reality is you don't yet. You're in 6th grade. So we talked about it. By the end of that conversation, he walked out of the room, he turned around, he looked at me and he said 7-8. And I said 7-8. And he said, yeah, 7-8. On that changed from that 4-5 to 7-8. Because I told him, if you just show up for your life 70, 75, 80% of the time and do what you just give that amount, you're going to be fine. And he got that. And see, I didn't say to him, you need to get your work done. You need to do your math. You're not doing your math. I didn't do any of that. I had this coaching conversation about, this is your life. This is your ball. How are you going to toss this ball? How are you going to bounce this ball? And that's the conversation I think we need to have with kids. Like, how's that working for you? Okay. They have to feel the consequences sometimes. When you guys are in situations with your, like Leilani with your son, you're just like, okay, that's your choice. You have a choice, And I've said to kids in my academy, okay, well, we can repeat 7th grade. We can do 7th grade next year. You don't want to go to 8th grade. That's cool.
Yeah.
Parents are going to like paying tuition again for another year, but we can do that. And they're like, no, I don't want to do that. Oh, okay. So now they're realizing how much control they really have. And that's what children sometimes need to know.
See, that's what I think that I had this revelation recently that a lot of times the way I personally tried to motivate my kids was like yelling or being, or, some kind of, the ways that I would try to motivate usually ended up putting them in fight or flight mode.
Right.
It's like when you're angry at someone, all it's doing, the only reason your kid reacts to it and does it is because they're in fight or flight mode. And so what you're doing is you're not using that. You're appealing to reason and you're appealing to their own desire to achieve, to go forward in life.
I'm dying over here because I've been talking to people and doing so much research on this, and I've been writing, so I'll be fast. But the fight or flight mode that you brought up, so have you heard of PDA before? Now I can't remember what it's called. It's like
what's it related to?
It has to do with resistance. PDA, and now I'll remember it in a second. But the thing that they were saying is when you directly tell a kid, hey, clean your room, it sends them into the fight or flight mode. And so in order to, and it comes alongside, PDA comes alongside autism and ADHD and ADHD. And I'm convinced that one of my children has it. This is why I've been researching it. But when you ask them to do something or tell them to do something, they spin into fight or flight mode. So what they're telling you to do is start doing indirect asking. So if you need to get your groceries out of the car, go get the groceries out of the car. They're like, you know what? You asked me to do it. I don't want to do it anymore. And so instead you would say, hey, do you want to go through the garage or do you want to take the wagon to get the groceries out of the car? So either both choices, the groceries are getting out of the car, but they have control, of which way it's done. And so it puts the control. So I've been doing a lot of research on that. And then I was also going to piggyback what you said, Dawn, with the whole relationship thing. And that's been the game changer with my son. It's just really spending more time on having a relationship with him and talking with him and even like praying with him and then listening to his heart. And even though there's so many things that I'm like, I don't want you doing that, then I'm like, okay, I have to trust him because God is going to speak to his heart and I have to trust God's doing the work. And that's another thing. I have another son that wants to get involved with something and I just have like, and can we pray about this right now? Because I feel very uncomfortable about you doing this. And he's like, Mom, God is speaking to me. This is what I want to do. And this is what I feel like he wants to do. And I feel like I got that a lot from my dad. Like my relationship, and I keep going back to that, is me and my dad probably have one of the best relationships that you can think of with a daughter and father. We've been through a lot together with my mom. She passed away, and then my sister, and it's a relationship thing. And I go to my dad. I'm like, what do I do about this? What do I do about this to this day? But even like just the respect that he has for me and vice versa is so
for your intelligence, and your wisdom.
Yeah.
And that's
I'm
how
like, how do I mimic that in my relationship with my kids?
You have to trust him. You have to really trust that your son, even if he fails, he'll be okay because he's resilient. He is a child of God. God will pull him through it. Like when my daughter wanted to quit her job and travel Europe, she was like a girl staying in youth hostels for 6 months. And I was like, no, no. And so, but she did fine. And I had to keep coming back to that. One, she has God. Okay, my prayer life just increased tenfold. But two, she was a wise girl. Like I could trust that. She did her homework. She knew what she was up against. She knew where she was staying. And the reason I know now for sure, when I went to Europe, she planned everything. She had a car set up, the hotel set up. She knew exactly what we were doing every single day. She was amazing. And so you have to trust your child. Even if you say to them, but you have to be honest with them, you know what, this is hard for me. But
right.
You know what, I'm going to trust God is leading you and you are wise and I'm going to pray for you because this is hard for me as your mom. And I've had to say that too. We all have, right? But there is that element. I know my father was the same way, Leilani. He passed, but he was like, you are so smart. He used to tell me that all the time. I don't know where he got that. But he would say that to me and I believed it, and it's like God saying to us, you're my child. I've got you. I've got your back. You're going to be, I'm going to get you through this, even if it's hard. And I've had hard. I've had a lot of hard. You've all had a lot of hard, but he's gotten us through it. And, but I think you're right. Just building that relationship, telling your son you love him and you trust him. I mean, that was the biggest gift my father ever gave me was that this trust, like you'll figure it out. He didn't always fix my problems for me. He would say, I know you're going to figure this out. So.
Yeah, right. I had one more thing that I was going to mention too, because I know, so this is just such a big conversation, mentors in our children's lives. Mm-hmm. I feel like, as a homeschool parent, I have some control over who my kids are around. Mm-hmm. And when I find that my child clicks with someone and I like an adult that I know that I can trust, I'm going to make that happen more often. And he won't even realize it. So that,
yeah. By the way, Leilani,
that's really good.
Yeah. I looked it up for you. PDA is pathological demand avoidance.
Yes, demand avoidance. Oh. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like OCD. It's like opposition. ODD, I mean. It's like
different.
Yeah, but there's difference.
And we've kind of switched into life skills for the parents.
Yeah, we have. And I was actually going to bring that up because, there are social situations, and we were talking about mentors, and I think that's a really good conversation to have. We push towards certain interactive social situations, and we avoid others for reasons. I'd love to talk about how you navigate that for a child, and so you can build their social skills in a way that is life-giving versus life-taking, because there's so many situations we can put our kids into that will actually shut them down further. And how do we navigate that?
That was for my daughter. I found that peers, because she's so far behind her peers, expecting her to develop peer relationships isn't really practical or feasible in a lot of ways. Mainly because, I know how hard it is to interact with her, especially being nonverbal, but, someone her own age, it's going to be that much more difficult. And I think I'm older and wiser. But so what we've done is found people like you were talking about, Leilani, who will interact with her, who will go with flow, whatever she's doing, and not be offended by loud noises, whether they're happy noises or unhappy noises. Or, they'll tolerate me walking around a conference center for a weekend with no shoes on because my daughter can't tolerate my shoes. Find people like that. And that's who we develop relationships for. And that's who she calls her friends. It's usually the teachers, not the peers. And that's been an adjustment, just because we have this expectation that they'll have friends their own age. But those are, in real life, those are really true friends to her.
Mm-hmm. They're angels in disguise.
Yeah. Yeah.
You take
And I
note
try not to
of
think
the
about them like that. Oh, sorry. I try
No,
not to think about them. Oh, go ahead.
I
'Cause
was just saying
responding.
those are the people that you take note of and make sure more things happen with those people.
Yeah, and I try not to think of them as angels in disguise because they're being
You're just,
true friends.
yeah.
And yes, it takes a special person to do that. No doubt. But in my mind, if I just think about everybody like that, then it's kind of a defeating attitude for me if I think about those people like that. So I have to think of them as being, true. They're just truly
Friends.
being themselves
Yeah.
toward
Yeah.
my daughter.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, that is.
I never
Yeah,
forget.
and-
Oh, sorry.
No,
I
go
was
ahead.
I was gonna say, like, there's at our congregation, so Naomi had my daughter that has Down syndrome had a birthday party, and not many people showed up, and it was a little sad. Except this, it was probably a good thing too, because of too many people might have been too much. But I'm that person that invites like everybody to everything, and then it gets overwhelming for everybody, and I'm like, whatever. That's me. But it was a small party, and these two girls came. And I never forgot, because Naomi, she's verbal, but it's not very understandable at times. And sometimes she gets kind of swept under the rug. She's my daughter that has Down syndrome. And it's sad sometimes because, kids will say, oh, Naomi did this, but she can't defend herself, or they'll leave her out of things. And it happens a lot. But these two girls and my daughter, they were involved. They created for her birthday this beautiful, out of pillows, a throne for her, and dressed her up. They made a crown for her. And then all of a sudden, I'm sitting there like socializing with parents. They bring her down the hallway, made an announcement, and the princess and walked her down, had her sit on the pillows, and started handing her gifts. And they did it all on their own, but it was like my daughter, my other daughter, and the two girls. And at that moment, I was like, okay, this is a friendship that I am keeping. And so now, and the mom of those two girls is very social. She's like, we're going to the zoo, and we're going skating, and we're doing. So then because of that, and those two girls really just embracing my daughter and listening, that's another thing that they do, is they're very respectful of what she's saying, combined with my daughter. It's just like a perfect situation that we just embrace that friendship. And it's awesome that I get along with mom too. So it was a godsend. And that's one of those things where like you grab a hold of those relationships and you just try to nurture them as much as you can.
Absolutely. I think that's so absolutely beautiful, because a lot of times as parents, we think our children have to have all these friends or be included in all these groups and situations. And the way I look at that is that, one, sometimes kids don't even want that. We just think that's to be normal, right? That's a normal thing to have all these friends. One, they may not even want that. Like you said, it may be overwhelming. If 20 kids showed up, that princess thing never would have probably happened. And because there would have been too much distraction, and yet it was more at her level. And then secondly, it's not true that we need to have a whole lot of people in our life. Having that one or two close friends, and you'll figure that out, especially as you get older, that even as an older person, I get to say that, I realize I don't need a whole lot of friends. And I'm a very social person. And years ago, I had to have all friends, parties, all this stuff. And now I'm like, I'm happy with my one good friend I can go to dinner with, and just, we can talk like we've known each other our whole lives or something, or go walk our dogs or something like that. And it's enough, I think because, and I just think, like, if as a parent, don't get sucked up in thinking, oh no, my child doesn't have a lot of friends, or they're being rejected a lot. It's okay. They're going to be fine. They probably don't even notice, and they probably don't even need the same thing that you think they need.
Yeah, that's a really good point that both of you have made. And I love, Leilani, that you're embracing, that. And you did mention praying. We have to pray for those relationships. God will give us what we need, what our child needs in the timing that's right. And the same thing happened for us. I had two other moms who had kids that just, needed one or two friends. And it's amazing how now into adulthood, how one of my children still embraces that friendship that made with one of those close friends. And he's, like a voice of wisdom in his life. And so you just don't know where those are going to go. And it takes a lot of mental energy to keep friendships. Mm-hmm. And I think we forget that, of how much it takes out of us. And so, like Don, yeah, when you get older, you don't have the ability to have a lot of close friends. If you want to be a really good friend, teach our kids how to be really good friends, it takes an investment, it takes time, and it takes working through conflict. If you have one or two people that you can pair up with another parent and teach your kids back and forth those skills, because they will run into places where they don't agree with each other. And it's not like you just go on and say, well, I'm going to go to my next friend then because you did this. I mean, that's the way the world teaches our kids how to behave, but that's not how we want them to learn how to have social skills. Yeah. And we model a lot of that in our homes, but they also need to do it with other people.
So I have a question then. So what do you do with the child who, because you just said, just move on to the next friend. If he feels threatened in any situation, he just cuts it out of his life, never to be seen again, whether it's a place, a person, an activity. How do you get that social skill back in place where you don't have to reject everything that rejected you? You can work through it. That's been really
that's hard. We went through a situation when my son was early teen, and this happened at church, actually with his best friend. And we were so blessed that our pastor sat down with both of them and said, here's what's going on. Here's where you're both at fault. And here's how we resolve this, because you're going to move forward and you're still going to be good friends. And he was willing to work with them through that, but they definitely needed an arbitrator, somebody that told them both that it is not okay to walk away from this, that's the easy way out. But having somebody else speak into that, maybe that's a non-parent, is a little bit less harsh on them to show them this is the way the world it needs to function. As a church, this is how we need to do that. And if they're willing to listen, that's how you grow. That's how you become a better person. But it's tough because it kind of makes them both see that they're at fault, and there's things that need fixing. And
I think mine's short. I promise. I was just gonna say, like you were saying, the two friends were able to sit with the pastor and go through. I know my son just went through a situation where his best friend just cut him off, and then working with him to build trust with other friends, that has been a challenge. But in a way, I'm kind of, I love the kid. I tried to reach out to mom to see if we could settle this together. She cut me off. And that was hard.
So it's like a family thing that
just said, we're done with you guys. And I was like, what? Like, I was hurt because I don't know all the details. I don't. Yeah. But I had to work with him, and I don't even want to try to guess what happened, but that was hard. So it does happen. And learning from that experience.
I would honestly, and I'm not just being facetious, I would honestly think about getting that child a coach. Like that they could work through, Peggy, you're saying a mentor. I'm saying one of our coaches, even we have a lot of coaches that have experience working with older students that, want to live in isolation because they don't want to be hurt. They're afraid to be rejected, and rejection is hard. Rejection, to be able to work with a coach who can empathize with you and understand, that's really hard what you're feeling. Because I actually have a student that I'm working with like that right now, and trying to show him, even though he says he wants friends, he doesn't want friends because friends don't understand him. They're not, he has all these reasons. And so we're working through each of those little by little. And I recently have set up an appointment for him to meet another one of my students online because I think they would be a good match, and it would just be like and he's like, well, I want a person in person. And I'm like, well, that you don't always get that. It doesn't always start that way, and so I know it's always something. And so, but that's all right. I love this kid, actually. He really makes me think. He pushes me in a corner and he makes me work so hard, and I love it. But it's true. Like when you've been hurt a lot, it's hard to want to venture out. I have felt that as an adult at times. I'm like, man, I'm good. Now we're good. And but it can even happen as an adult. But I think when you have a person in your court who's empathizing and giving you some strategies and really figuring out, do you want this? If you want this, there is a way. And that's how I coach. It's like, I can't make you want to be that way. I don't necessarily believe that maybe even is good for you. You need to kind of heal and work through it at your pace. What is your pace? So finding out what their interests are and how they can. Does that make sense, Stephanie? I mean, is that helpful at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think too, what we've all been bringing up is that social skills and working on them in real life scenarios are going to open our child up to the potential of being hurt.
Yeah.
That's what relationships are about. You're opening your life up to trust somebody that you don't know is trustworthy. And that is only found out through trial and error with that person. And that's difficult because we want the lesson to be taught perfectly, just like it came out of a curriculum book. And unfortunately, that's not how life works.
And the parents get hurt too. I mean, as a parent, we get hurt if our child is being hurt. Like who was it that was talking?
Me.
Leilani about the
I'm still hurt. Okay.
Yeah, I know she's hurting over that. And that's true. But it's like there has to be a point where you just go, you know what? People aren't like me. They don't relate like me. They don't relate at the level that I relate, the deep level that how I care about people. Not all people are like that. Do you know, even at my age, I just experienced that recently with a so-called friend. And I just had a whole different idea about that relationship than she did. And it was easy for her to just clink it aside soon as it, wasn't beneficial, I guess. And actually, to be honest, it was because of my faith, because of my values and my faith. And she didn't like that because we weren't aligned that way. And that's a long story. But still, it was hurtful. It was still hurtful because I was like, well, I can love you for who you are. Because I'm not trying to push myself on you, but I'm going to be myself. And even at my age, and it was still it was kind of weird. So yeah, you can only imagine what our kids are feeling. And then as parents, sometimes I think we hold our kids back because we don't want to see them hurt because we don't want to hurt. We know people are mean. We know they can hurt you, but teach them to love anyway, I don't know.
Yeah. So life skills and social skills are a huge part of forming and the formation of our child. Have you ever found that your entire homeschool day, maybe week, month, focused just on learning these skills? And then what tools did you use to help those lessons or scaffolding that fell in place to kind of help them just be able to learn those skills as part of, what you were doing at home?
When my daughter was younger, we use social stories sometimes, the little books that you create that have a story so that your child can understand what's going on. You can find them online. Just search whatever your topic is in social stories. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Yes.
And so I had to create one, and it keeps popping up every once in a while in my life. It's laying around the house somewhere, and it's called "My Brother Can Eat in the Family Room If He Wants to." Because at one point she decided that one of her brothers could not. The other ones could, but this one brother could not eat. And I don't know if he probably was eating something like cereal that was, dry cereal that was crunchy that she could hear. I'm guessing that's what the problem was. But it then started like morphing into other things I learned if you don't cut it off right away. So she had to, so we read that book frequently. And, at the time she was watching Blippi or something like that. And so, I draw on the little TV screen and plop in a picture of Blippi. So he'd be in the background of the TV room. And it was crazy. So social stories mostly worked. We had to use one for the bowling alley when it was too loud for her. It was very loud. So to prepare her for the loudness, another thing that I've done is played videos. And this kind of a social skill, but going to the dentist, I would try to find a video of someone female and about her age or maybe a little younger or that looked like her size so that she could see what was going to happen before it happened. And that really helped. So just kind of pre-teaching or preparing for
Right.
what's happening, or using the social story after it's already happened and you want to nip it in the bud. Those are two things I've used.
So Stephanie, you made that little book for her, right? About her brother. He can eat in there. That is so cute. I made one for my daughter. It was one of those accordion books, and I still have it. And she's 26 now, but I made this little accordion book of her going to bed. And it was like the steps of what we do when we get ready to go to bed. I don't know why she needed it, but it was so cute. It's still cute to this day. If I could publish it, it would be adorable. But it was just like, first we brush our teeth, then we take a bath or whatever, but it was, Annie's go to bed book. It was called that. It was so cute. But yeah, anything like that where you personalize it and make it about their life, draw those pictures and talk about it. I love that. Love that idea.
Or read books about it.
No, read books about, there's lots of books now on different topics.
Right. Yeah.
And we'll talk about it with her talker. She has one of those talkers where she can, because like she's, like I said, she's verbal. You just can't understand her. But if something's bothering her, we'll talk about it. It's not necessarily people. Like I know, like she can't stand car washes, but we have to get the car washed. And so she, she really fixates on it, and you have to talk about it to get past it. And she uses the talker. So she's seeing pictures and she's reading, she's creating sentences, she's working on speech. So it's like this.
Wow. Is that a little device
Lots
called
of learning?
It's a little device.
It's like an an AAC or ACC? Augmented communication.
Right.
Yeah, it's TD Snap. There's an app online that you can download, TD Snap. But we also have something else that's specific. It's like you can use an iPad and download TD Snap as an app, but we have one specifically for her that has nothing else on it but that program.
Oh, cool.
That's good. We can't do anything else on it. We had a lot of times if we would go on like a field trip, my oldest was very anxious about just what the space was like, how he could navigate it, where he could find a bathroom. So oftentimes they would have like virtual tours that we could take of the space so we could actually feel like we had been there. And that gave a lot of comfort level to my son. When we got there, it was like he had already been there. So those are incredible tools. So that we kind of take out the what ifs and make it into, well, we've already walked through the space, so you already know what it's going to be like, and watching as many videos like you guys had talked about, but you have to turn that almost into the pre-teaching before you go, so that it's less likely to be issues, social issues, and even just life skills that you need to develop. And things will come up too when you're watching those videos, because it'll make you think, oh, I haven't thought about how we navigate this. And then how do we prepare for that so that we can navigate it well?
That's good.
Yeah, and I think we've been talking about social skills, but I think the pre-teaching, like we're talking about now, this also works for life skills. Because sometimes they need, Dawn, you mentioned it earlier, they need to see the big picture or the end result to actually get this, to understand the steps. Otherwise, it makes no sense and there's no motivation because they don't know where they're headed. They get lost in the process. So I think these things we're talking about work for both.
Yeah, absolutely.
Life skills.
Yeah, I mean, they get to that age where like, what's the meaning of this? Well, what's the purpose of me learning this? And, you've got to give them that reasoning behind it because, well, you're going to learn to cook because you do want to eat, don't you? At some point, I will not be cooking for you anymore. And so, but putting everything in kind of those perspectives that, these are things that you have to have for this reason. And it isn't that I'm being mean or that this is just, some arbitrary curriculum I just pulled out of, thin air that we would do this year to fill time. because I think that's what they often think.
And I love to ask the kid, like, well, I don't know. How do you think this will help you in life? Do you think it's important? Do you think it's necessary? The hard part is when there's no interest. And like Stephanie, you have to create that interest. You have to create that reason, that purpose. Well, let's see. What would you eat if you couldn't cook? Well, there's canned beans. It's kind of like you can repeat 7th grade if you want, or you can eat canned beans and cereal. Maybe that sounds fun right now, but as we know, if we just do the same thing over and over for our body, we'll get sick. So you tell me, is this a good idea to learn? And if, you got to make and learn what you want to cook, what would that be? So I think, and as parents, we have to think, what is the objective? What is my objective for doing this? Not just showing the child the end result, but what is the purpose? And I have to say that to my parents all the time. What is the end goal here? Like I had a parent recently say, I just want him to comprehend what he's reading. I said, I want him to comprehend what he's reading too, but also to put it in reality. So that it would, that it would make sense that he could apply it, not just understand it. But now how does he apply it? So there's a whole nother, so you have to think about, what am I trying to get completed here? Do I just want someone to finish a math book? Or do I want that child to love learning math, and get excited about math is interesting. So, gosh,
I'd love to kind of shift gears a little bit as to talk about fears, worries, and then changing expectations. I think that's something that maybe, we definitely have to do. And something we go through. We fear our child is not going to be able to do anything in their life. And that unfortunately makes the whole situation worse because our fears just become realized if we actually delve into them. And sometimes we do need to change our expectations because our child can't get to the place where we would like them to be. Does anybody have anything to share on that?
The only thing I could think of is just prayer and trusting God, because I feel like I feel like that's the go-to answer for everything.
But absolutely.
A little, almost feels cheesy saying that, but I know
I go a little deeper with that. I think I definitely believe that. Like I'm with you there, but I also think instead of focusing on my expectations for this child, what are their strengths? What are the gifts? What's their learning disposition, their learning styles? What are the gifts God has given them? Are they a people person? Do they bring joy? I mean, maybe that's their purpose and gift in life. And if you can build that in that child, that's so much more important than they can know their times tables. I'm sorry, people, but that's what I think. And not that times tables aren't important, because I can hear those dads right now saying, they just need to learn their times tables. I learned my times tables. Okay, yes, you did. But this child has different gifts and strengths. And I would say, remember those things, like post them, have them somewhere. And I know the profile that we do on SPED Homeschool, or the assessment, I should say, is indicative.
Yeah, the mind print one.
The mind print,
absolutely.
Where you can learn your child's, their strengths and focus on those.
Yeah, that was a huge eye opener for me, just taking that test and going, it was relieving knowing that, this is just somewhere that my brain struggles, and this is where it does well. So why am I not, focusing on this side and just being okay with not being perfect at everything, or feeling like I have to be.
Okay.
It made me realize those things that I do that I've always been insecure about are the things that I need to do in order to succeed in certain areas. Like what was it? I learned that I have to read out loud when I'm reading or I lose focus.
It's okay.
That was one of the things that came up, and that's okay. That's actually a tool that I grabbed a hold of to help me.
Yeah, it's a good tool.
I still want to do that for my son. I'd be very curious.
I love it when I teach kids to use their fingers to count, and parents are like, "What?" And I'm like, "That's why we have fingers. I still use my fingers. If I'm counting, fours, I might go like this, but I'm a very kinesthetic learner, so that makes sense for me. But if you don't have, like the wherewithal, if you have a mindset of this is the way we should learn, this is the way my desk is moving, it's shape, if this is the way we're shaped to think this is the way we should learn. This is the way my child should learn. That's you got to erase that. You got to know your child, like through these assessments.
That's the scripture,
And I
though.
know
Like, your ways are not my ways.
Right.
Your thoughts are not my thoughts.
Yes, that's
Absolutely.
a good one.
Yeah, and I know, Stephanie, you've done the same thing as me with at least one of your kids. Is high school looked very different for your children, for each of them, because of their certain bents. I mean, I changed high school completely for my middle child because I was like, you know what? It's just not worth doing algebra because this is not something necessary for this child. And so even though I required calculus for one and college algebra for another before she even graduated high school, the other one just had regular life math, and that was okay.
Yeah. Business math.
Yeah.
You could do life skills math. You could learn about banking. You could learn about, I have a student doing that right now.
Banking is math.
Yeah.
I think that's important to include life skills in high school curriculum, especially for kids who need it. It's you don't have to use a formal curriculum like learning how to cook. It helps if you have like a structure or a backbone to start with. But learning how to cook is important for pretty much everyone to learn, because even those guys who are going to have that wife that cooks for them, when that baby comes, or the second one or the third one or the fourth one, like in our house, got to have at least 3 things you can cook. In our house, it was tacos, spaghetti, and grilling burgers.
I love that. It's a good, see, that's a goal. This is the objective.
Right.
You need to learn to cook 3 things. I love that,
So that was all my husband had to learn. He just learned those 3 things, and that tided us over when I couldn't cook.
Yes, my husband was stir frying pizza. He can make it from scratch, but yes. So as we're wrapping up, I would love for you just to share some encouragement for, a young mom who's just starting, teaching the life and social skills to her child. What would you tell them matters most?
That's a showstopper.
Yeah, I know. Dramatic
conversation stopper right there.
I think that whether you believe it or not, everything that you do, everything that comes out of your mouth, everything that you practice is what your child is going to do. And all your mistakes they're going to do and all your good things they're going to do. I see that in my children now that are grown. I see the beautiful things, and I see some things I'm like, ooh, that looks like me, And so it's challenging, but just remember, you're modeling the life, hopefully a beautiful life that they're going to see. I have this one, just really quick, this one family, the mom has 2 children on the spectrum, nonverbal. They're the most gentle, sweetest children. They have no behaviors. They're not acting out. They're not screaming. They're not like going crazy around the house, which she's like, I don't know what to do. I go, you're doing it. You're loving your kids. And it's a beautiful thing.
Very encouraging. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, what I would say is give yourself a lot of grace, because you will not know everything. And there's a point where you may learn something and it's beyond the point where you could teach it, but God knew that you wouldn't know. And it's all part of your child's story. It's part of your story. And we're all learning and growing, and we cannot be regretful of what we didn't know and couldn't change then. But what we can do is take what we have now and do the best what we can with it. So I guess that's my little encouragement.
All right, Peggy's making me cry now.
Yeah.
And I think that for kids who have parents of kids with more severe learning challenges, to remember that your child can learn anything, but they often have to be taught everything. And that means your homeschool is going to look different than those who are just pursuing academics. So find out what matters most to you that they learn, and also what your child's life after high school is going to look like. And that's what you focus on. You can't do all the things, especially if your child's way behind or, moving slowly through anything. Just put your eyes on that future life after high school, because that's really what education is. It's, training kids to go to college or go to trade school or the workplace. So your child has a unique path, and wherever that path leads, that's what you're training for all through school. So don't worry about getting behind. Don't worry about teaching all the things. Teach what's important for you and your child.
Yes.
And I was just going to add that you're not always going to see the fruit of your labors. And like, you know, if you want your kid to read, you could be saying the same thing over and over and over again, but you're not going to see it for years down the line, or not even just reading, but anything in general.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's hard because we feel like the reward to us is to see that our child has accomplished what we're teaching them. And we may never even see it in our lifetime. But you are making a difference. Absolutely. No matter what, you're following your calling. If God has called you to the place that you're at, then you are doing the right thing and your child will benefit from it. No matter what you're seeing. Well, thank you, ladies, for this conversation. It may have taken some tangents and some rabbit trails that we hadn't expected, but I think it was very encouraging and informative, and definitely, it was definitely a great conversation. So.
Sorry.
And thank you all so much for joining us for this meaningful conversation on teaching life and social skills with confidence. We hope you walk away encouraged, not knowing that you're not alone, and that teaching these skills in a slow, steady journey that unfolds with patience, planning, and mostly prayer, it works. It works because God's in it. If this episode encouraged you, be sure to listen to past episodes of Empowering Homeschool Conversations. We've got a library full of honest, hope-filled discussions to help you on your homeschool path. And don't forget to visit Homeschool Heroes at spedhomeschool.com for more tools, resources, and support, and especially created materials for parents teaching children with learning needs. And also check out all the links for all of my co-hosts that are listed in the show notes to reach out to them for their resources as well. Remember, you've got this, and we're cheering you on every step of the way. So until next time, we'll see you here on Empowering Homeschool Conversations. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
This has been Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com.